Time now for the Wiltfong Whiparound with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, let's start in the Lone Star State. Four-star defensive lineman Nigel Smith is set to announce his commitment tomorrow. Looks like it's between Oklahoma, Ohio State, Penn State, and Texas A&M. But where are you leaning a day out?
Leaning towards the Boomer Sooners. Oklahoma has been the program to watch for Nigel Smith since Brent Venables and his staff got to Norman. They were one of the first prospects they reached out to and prioritized, from Coach Chavis to Coach Bates. He has felt a close connection with them. He has been to campus numerous times. I think he's recently been on Oklahoma's campus, and just the trajectory of the program. You talk to him about OU, and he points to Coach Venables having #1 defenses at Kansas State and Clemson. He thinks that's the trajectory at Oklahoma, relationship with Coach Valai, the entire staff. I think he feels very comfortable in Norman, and I like where Oklahoma sits going into this announcement.
If Oklahoma ends up landing Nigel Smith, he'll push that class into the top 10. It'll give them 23 commitments. So with only a few spots remaining, Steve, what's left on the board for the Sooners?
Well, they had a lot of top targets on campus this past weekend for their 73-0 romp over Arkansas State. A couple official visitors, offensive lineman Daniel Nkinkumi, who is from over the pond in Europe, was on campus. The crystal ball favoring Oklahoma for him. There's video of him out there running the 40-yard dash in under 5 seconds. So freaky traits for him, a guy that Bill Bedenbaugh and company have honed in on. He talked about how the fan base is amazing. He talked about the history of developing offensive linemen in the culture. That was his first ever college game, so he's still only seen one team score a touchdown in person in his life. It's the Sooners. I think he'll help Oklahoma score touchdowns for years to come. And then Danny Okoye is a very coveted edge player from Noah Homeschool there in state. Was back on campus. He raved about his visit. He has future official visits planned with LSU in Tennessee. Last I heard, those were maybe getting canceled. I think Tennessee's still battling to try and get him to come back to Knoxville. This is a prospect that that Texas has also really pushed for, but I think that Oklahoma is clearly the one to beat for him coming out of his official visit. I had some other young men on campus. 5-star Terry Bussey was one of them, an athlete recruit from the Lone Star State. I still like A&M for him. He said it was a great visit. He talked about the relationships he's built with the staff. Says he loves everything about OU. He's going to be at Alabama this weekend, more on the Tide in a little bit. LSU is a player there. I still like A&M for Bussey, but Oklahoma, Michael Boganowski's a linebacker, safety, rover type player that was back on campus. He's taken his time with the decision, but the culture fit at Oklahoma, they love Venables and his defense and the track record there. And something that all these guys mention about Oklahoma is that soul mission program that they have there. That's something that these guys really like regarding the culture and the development of just being a man. Also is something going in Oklahoma's favor for a lot of these kids. And so Oklahoma had a top 5 class last year, guys. They're in great position to finish with the top 10 class this year. Nigel Smith would certainly be a nice bump there. And then they got a chance to get a lot of those guys that visited this weekend.
Steve, I like to keep you on your toes, so I'm going to ask early in our segment to go ahead and hit that like button. I'm supposed to tell you that it keeps the content free. That kind of sounds like a threat, but I'm not above it, so go ahead, hit that like button. We got more decisions to talk about, though. 4-star linebacker Chris Cole out of Virginia. He is picking between a top 6 on Sunday. USC, Penn State, Virginia Tech, Miami, Georgia, and Tennessee. What's the latest with him?
Well, I still like Georgia on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball for Chris Cole. Relationship with Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart, the track record of player development at the position, the scheme on defense, and really just them, the stage they play on, the 2 straight national championships. Those are things that have put them in great position. But this official visit to USC this past weekend, it makes me nervous about the crystal ball for Georgia, because the time spent with Lincoln Riley talking about the linebackers that they've recruited. He's the #1 linebacker target on their board this cycle. the NIL opportunities. His father lives out in the Los Angeles area. There's a lot of excitement for Chris Cole about a potential decision to play for USC. And he's going to be at Tennessee this weekend on his official visit. So we'll see if Tennessee can leapfrog from where I think they're in the third position all the way up to the number one position. They get the last in-person chance to impress. But talking to people, talking to Chris, talking to people around Chris, talking to other sources around the recruitment, I still have Georgia on the crystal ball, but USC certainly giving them a lot to think about, and we'll see what the Vols can do with their official visit this weekend.
Steve, there are a bunch of big games this weekend, and recruits are antsy to hit the road. Let's start with Colorado against Nebraska. Coach Deion Sanders making a loud statement in week one with that victory at TCU. What has been the recruiting effect of what we saw from Coach Prime?
Man, recruits are buzzing about Colorado on the trail. Guys, this is a 10 a.m. local kickoff against Nebraska for them. Talking to some people around the program, by 1 p.m., there could be a lot of electric talk about Colorado if they can do in Boulder what they just did in Fort Worth. And they're going to have some top targets on campus. Top 247 athlete Cameron Michael from the Peach State is taking his official visit along with his teammate edge rusher Amontre Bradford. Cameron Michael, some schools like him in the secondary, some schools like him at wideout. Colorado, they have a track record all of a sudden of playing guys over 100 snaps on both sides of the ball. He said he would be certainly interested in that if it were to work out for him that way, if he did pick Colorado, but he's one of the top two-way players in the country. Visiting Colorado this weekend, was there for their spring game. He's high on them as he also considers Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee, among others for him. And they're also trying to get Gage Ginther on campus. He's an in-state offensive lineman. He's committed to Tennessee. They're trying to get the spatula out on Gage Ginther. I think Colorado can be spatula city this cycle. It was Auburn a year ago. But Colorado, if they have the year that they're planning to have, they're going to make these programs that have top guys committed work all the way up to December as they aim for another Travis Hunter type flip, another Cormani McLean type flip. Gage Ginther, that's a guy that they would love to flip. But the big news around Colorado right now this week is their 2025 quarterback recruiting, guys. They're in on two of the absolute nation's best, including the number one player at the position, Bryce Underwood, out of Belleville High in Michigan. He's a two-time state champion. He was trying to get to Colorado this weekend. 10 a.m. kickoff, logistics, wasn't going to make it happen, but they talked to him and his family, talked to Deion Sanders this week. His dad, his mom, and Bryce, they were blown away by the conversation. Certainly they saw the highlights from the win over TCU. They're not able to get there this weekend. They're going to be out there for the USC game. They see an opportunity to play early there. Now, starting right away is not the most important thing, but playing early is a factor in Bryce's decision. So they see that. They see what Deion Sanders did at Jackson State. They see what he's quickly doing at Colorado. They love the coaching staff there. They want to get to know them better. They're excited to get out there for the USC game and see that atmosphere. He's going to be at LSU for the Auburn game. LSU's a major contender. We know he's going to pop up at nearby Michigan, Alabama, and Oregon hanging around for Bryce Underwood. And then you have Antoine Hill. He's the number 6 quarterback in the country in the 24/7 Sports Player rankings from Houston County in Georgia. He's going to visit Colorado for the Stanford game. They're on his short list as well. So Colorado, I think that they got a great chance to sign one of the nation's best quarterbacks in this 2025 cycle. Who's it going to be? I don't know. But if they keep putting up 500 yards of offense, passing offense, 4 receivers over 100-yard receiving apiece, that's an exciting offense to potentially play in. And they have 2 of the nation's best quarterbacks strongly considering going out there to play their college football.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I want to play in that Sean Lewis coached offense. That was electric. Deion's been saying from the beginning, I ain't that hard to find. And man, 1-0, and they are flocking to Boulder. Let's go down south. Alabama hosting Texas in the most anticipated matchup on Saturday night. Now, while everyone's watching the battle on the field, we're keeping our eye on the recruiting battles, which only stand to intensify when Texas eventually joins the SEC. But how big of a recruiting weekend will this one be for the home team Tide?
Yeah, this is 5-star central this weekend as far as programs taking their visits. One guy I want to highlight in the 2024 class, we could talk all day, so you got to go to Bama Online for that conversation for who's visiting Alabama this weekend. But Daniel Hill is a top 247 athlete recruit from Mississippi who Alabama is recruiting as a running back. But as you see right there on this first clip, he's making plays out of the slot as a running back. He started his high school career as a running back. Now he's one of the most ferocious ball carriers in the country. He's actually playing quarterback here as a senior. His play style reminds of Jahmyr Gibbs with his ability to be versatile within that offense. He's been visiting Alabama for a decade now. And this is one of their most coveted recruits on the board as they try and add to a recruiting class that ranks number 4 nationally. Daniel Hill had a decision date. South Carolina appeared like the favorite, but he's held off on deciding. I think Alabama's got a major is one of the major reasons why I could easily see him picking Alabama. They're excited to get there, check out what's going to be an awesome primetime game atmosphere. But talking to his family today, his dad talked about the running back pedigree, how many running backs Alabama has in the league right now, it being a development factory. I think that is huge for the Crimson Tide. So he is the 2024 recruit, in my opinion, to watch this weekend that I think could ultimately end up in their class. He's going to take an official to Tennessee later this month before deciding, and the Gamecocks are still in there. And then 2 2025s that I really want to highlight. You have our number 1 ranked player in the country, offensive lineman David Sanders. There's been a lot of talk about Georgia and his recruitment early, and Clemson was a dream offer for him. But he's been to Alabama several times, including at the end of the summer. They got to spend a lot of time with Nick Saban, and Eric Wolford, the offensive line coach, shadowed them on their visit. And on that last visit, that was where they kind of laid out the plan for David and what it's like to develop within Alabama's program. He did a scavenger hunt. They did a picnic. They enjoyed the laid-back atmosphere. Now they're coming back for what should be a great game experience. Alabama's on the short list for David Sanders with Georgia, Clemson, Michigan, and Tennessee, and some others. And then George McIntyre, he's the number 2 quarterback in the country in the 24/7 sports recruiting rankings. He's the number 1 quarterback in the country on Alabama's board. He was the first signal caller that offensive coordinator Tom Rees offered when he got over to Tuscaloosa. He's been to Alabama several times. He's had a lot of conversation with Nick Saban, and just loves getting that advice from Coach Saban, and loves the pedigree and guys that he's coached, and said there's just no other coach with the credibility to mention the great players that he's coached. Perhaps he'll be one of the next great players that Nick Saban coaches. And similar to what Nick Hill's dad or Daniel Hill's dad said about running backs in Alabama and the NFL, they boast a lot of quarterbacks in the league as well. So those are just 3 of the many blue chippers that are going to be at Alabama this weekend for what's going to be an awesome ball game.
Steve, we've got Spatula City, we've got 5-Star Central. I think you've got to start making some T-shirts, my friend. People are clamoring for them. And speaking of clamoring, I hear there's tickets available for Miami, Texas A&M. A lot of recruits will be on campus to check out another rematch from last year. What are you expecting? Who are some big names to watch down in Miami?
Well, this is a game for Mario Cristobal and his staff to get more people to buy into that program, buy some tickets. These guys are working hard as hell on the trail to return Miami back to the glory days of what we've seen them be multiple times in our lifetime. But LJ McCray is the top recruit that's going to be on campus for Miami, uncommitted in that regard anyway, from Mainland High there in Daytona Beach. LJ McCray we got a chance to watch Florida State play last weekend. More on that in a little bit, but this is an opportunity for Miami to show LJ McCray, hey, this is a program that's on the rise. This is a program that has everything you're looking for from a player development standpoint, playing on the biggest stage, playing in the biggest games, and getting developed to be the player you want to be. This is an opportunity to make a statement against the ranked Texas A&M team in town, because Georgia is the program that I think has the momentum there. Florida's another program that's been mentioned a lot there, but Florida State and Miami trying to make moves. And then top 247 edge rusher Booker Pickett Jr. is going to be on campus. He's a Miami legacy recruit. He has the Hurricanes in his top 5. He too saw Florida State play last week. But I think that if Miami's pushing there, they could ultimately be tough to beat for Booker Pickett Jr. And then they have a couple guys committed top 247 athlete JoJo Trader, and then top 247 defensive lineman Artavius Jones. Schools like Florida State aren't going away on those two young men, so getting them back, getting them around your staff, getting them around the team to show them how this team is developing from year one to year two with their own eyes, letting them be able to visualize themselves as future Hurricanes. It's big to get those commits back on campus for this ball game, as schools certainly haven't stopped recruiting each of them.
All right, before we let you go, quick rewind. Florida State with a statement victory over LSU in week 1. So how much momentum have you seen from that convincing win on the trail for the Noles?
Well, I logged the 24/7 Sports crystal ball forecast in favor of Florida State for one of the top uncommitted players in the country, one of the top defensive backs in America, Jamari Howard from Miami. I've been hearing a lot of buzz that they've been the program to beat for a while. Talked to him after the game. He's like, I knew they would win against FSU. And things that stand, he just finds Florida State to be a hard-working program. He fits in with the guys on the team. He talked about how dedicated everybody is. I know he's really connected with that staff. Now, Miami, they're not going to go away on Jamari Howard, but I think current pulse, in addition to that game, I like where the Seminoles sit, so it was time to log a pick. They had Jeremiah Smith there, number 1 receiver in the country. We've said on the show it's going to be extremely hard to flip him from Ohio State, but he's got an official visit to Florida State down the road. Maybe if Keon Coleman has a monster year, he saw him have a monster game, but that Florida State offense, he really likes Norvell, so they're going to hang in there and try and keep chipping away. You know, Georgia, there's been some buzz behind the scenes at Georgia. Don't sleep on them to ultimately flip KJ Bolden. I think that got harder. You know, KJ Bolden was at the game, number 1 safety. Talked to him afterwards. He absolutely loved the experience. I talked to some of those recruits. They put the recruits right next to the Florida State band. They just said the atmosphere was incredible in Orlando if you were watching it through the lens of a Florida State prospect or Florida State recruit. So even though Mike Norvell and company couldn't talk to them at the event, those recruits got a chance to really feel it out. And then LJ McCray, I had Florida State running 3rd for him coming into that game. And I don't necessarily know exactly where they are coming out of it, other than that he's got his official visit coming up here in the fall. And they gave him a lot to digest, as like, this is a program that is in the hunt to potentially win a national championship. And he's the type of player that can help keep that trajectory what it is, because Florida State is one of the most exciting teams in the country. They returned the most starters. Am I right, Emily? Correct me if I'm wrong. From the year before, they got their quarterback, Jordan Travis. They're dynamic on offense. That defense was suffocating in the second half. And LJ McCray had a great seat for all of that as they try and recruit against Georgia. We've seen Florida State have some success against Georgia this cycle, from Landon Thomas to KJ Bolden. Those are guys that we've had Georgia in the driver's seat for. We have Georgia in the driver's seat for LJ McCray, but can Florida State do what they've done a couple times already? Those are national championship type recruiting wins, and they're going to try for another there with LJ McCray.